Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. And thank you for joining CKAN Monthly Live 5. Massive welcome and thank you for being with us today. So today we'll be talking for the Pacific Data Hub. That's a central repository of reliable current Pacific data that provides authoritative data on a wide range of topics from education, energy, environment, economic development, fisheries, etc. We will learn more about the project from speaker, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Sioeli Tonga?
That's perfect. Yep, you got it.
Yeah, all right, cool. And as far as I understood, we'll have two of his colleagues co-presenting with him. That's Stan and Phil, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So before I give you the opportunity to present yourselves, I just have a few housekeeping items. First, in case you haven't yet attended CKAN Monthly Live, this is a monthly web series where each third Wednesday of the month, we meet to connect and explore different topics within and around CKAN. Now, there are two ways to ask a question. You can raise a hand and then moderator will mute you and then you can go ahead. Or you can drop a question in the chat. After the presentation, there will be a Q&A session where you're also welcome to share your questions and thoughts. If you want to add things to the agenda, feel free to do it in the meeting doc. I'll drop a link in a few seconds in the chat. I encourage everybody to open the meeting doc, drop name, affiliation. If you can add some suggestions for topics, this will help us frame our future discussions. The meeting is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I think that's all for now. And over to our speakers. Let me know if everything is good on your side.
Stan, if you want to share your screen, I'll start. I'll kick off our presentation. All right, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. A very warm Pacific greetings to you all from New Caledonia. I'm really honored and humbled to have been invited to share with you our data journey with CKAN and to share with you some of the work we are doing to enhance access to data to support sustainable development for the Pacific region. So my name is Sioeli Tonga, or just Sio for short. I am the program manager for the Pacific Data Initiative with the Pacific Community, SPC. I'm joined by my colleagues from SPC, Stanislas Ozier and Phil Burt, who will be co-presenting our story. So I'll start by providing a bit of context about who we are as an organization and what the Pacific Data Hub is about. Stan will then talk about Pacific Data Hub technology stack, providing an overview of the architecture. And then Phil will bring this to life with a demo, showing some of the integration points between CKAN and our other data platforms. Right, so the Pacific Community, or SPC, is the Pacific region's principal scientific and technical development organization. We're owned and governed by our members, which includes 22 Pacific Island countries and territories, and our metropolitan members, Australia, France, New Zealand, and the United States of America. We also have the United Kingdom, who is also in the process of resuming its membership with SPC. And we also have the European Union, who has permanent observer status after many years of supporting development in the Pacific region. So SPC has served the Pacific for over 70 years. We work across several sectors, and much of our focus is on cross-cutting issues such as climate change, disaster risk management, food security, gender equality, human rights, non-communicable diseases, and youth employment. Our work draws upon skills and capabilities from around the region and internationally to support the empowerment of Pacific communities. So in serving the Pacific region in this capacity for many decades, we have invariably produced and amassed lots and lots of data. And in acknowledging our role as custodians and stewards of data on behalf of our members, we're of course implored to examine how we are managing the region's data resources. So we're constantly asking ourselves, how can we do things better? How do we ensure that the data under our stewardship is protected, shared responsibly, and used ethically? And how do we ensure that it continues to be accessible beyond project funding horizons? And also, how do we ensure that data can be used to inform policy development and decision-making that results in positive outcomes for Pacific people? So the Pacific Data Hub is SPC's strategic response to addressing these concerns. The Pacific Data Hub initiative is led by SPC and is supported by the New Zealand Government, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. It aims to improve access to timely and reliable data from the Pacific, and our ambition is to provide the most comprehensive range of data and information about the Pacific from the Pacific, to provide that evidence base needed to inform better policy development and decision-making to support our members in tackling the most complex challenges that they face. So this initiative builds on our institutional strengths and our application of science and knowledge to support the development aspirations of our members. And it builds on our intimate understanding of Pacific context and our relationships and convening power and bringing together the right people and partnerships to develop Pacific-centric solutions. The Pacific Data Hub is a natural evolution of SPC's role as custodian and steward of data on behalf of our members. And as a responsible data steward, we acknowledge that our role needs to evolve and adapt to current and emerging challenges. The data platforms and data services we provide serve as a sustainable data infrastructure for all of our members, many of whom who don't have the means to establish and sustain these platforms on their own. We're doing this to ensure that the data resources our data resources are well managed and can continue to be made available as a regional public good. So when we set out on this journey, we needed something to act as a catalyst for change, something to spark the imagination and capture the attention of our stakeholders. We needed something that we could use to demonstrate value quickly in order for us to get buy-in and attract the necessary financial support that would kickstart our data journey. This thing for us was CKAN, coupled with the relationship we have developed with our technology partner, Link Digital. It's important to point out that having a partner that really understood our challenges and what we were trying to achieve really allowed us to quickly develop our prototype that we were able to then use to demonstrate capability, score some early wins with our stakeholders that would secure the buy-in we needed. So CKAN for us was a proven data management platform with an active development community and a pool of development agencies who were ready and willing to help us get the ball rolling. So by adopting CKAN and leveraging the expertise of our technology partner, we're able to accelerate our initial proof of concept and all the way through the iterative development cycle to get us to a public launch of the Pacific Data Hub in December of 2020. So that's a bit of context from us about SPC, our organization, and the Pacific Data Hub, where we've come from. I'll now hand over to Stan to talk about the technology platform and provide a bit of a architectural overview. Thank you, Stan.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Stan, Solution Architect for Pacific Data Hub. And so, as CEO explained, we at SPC already have gathered over, 70 years, a lot of data, and we have stored them in different tools. So like an indicator database, microdata library, and so on, and different kind of databases and systems, whatever they can be, Postgre, GeoServer, and so on. So many different platforms. But SPC was not the only one holding data in the Pacific. Like we also had other organizations having their own kind of own platforms and systems. So the idea behind the Pacific Data Hub was to provide an entry point to all this data that was more or less available. And So we created pacificdata.org with a nice front end, as nice as it can be, providing data stories and so on. And then how can we gather all this data together? CKAN, of course. CKAN was the best way to get all the data we already had, collect all the data we already had through harvesters, provide a data store as well for new data that was coming in, and obviously provide a search powered by solar, by the way. So we can search for all publications and data sets that are available in the Pacific. On top of that, we do develop some dashboards, which are based on focus on topics, specific topics, such as sustainable development goals, maritime boundaries, education, and many more. And those dashboards get the data from CKAN, or sometimes directly from the systems. So that's the big picture, right? In order to implement all that, like any other IT project, we had to go through a design process, as in graphic design, define the schemas, organizations in the Pacific, and groups when we focused on some specific topics. We had to develop or customize some harvesters, and we had to integrate CKAN in Drupal, and we had to provide some, or at least gather usage statistics through various tools, such as an easy one is Google Tags. We obviously had to face some challenges. At first, the metadata was not great, so we had to communicate with our stakeholders, and we had to improve the publication workflow as well, which is quite related to metadata. The first schemas we came up with were a bit customized, so we tried to standardize them. Monitoring and maintaining harvesters is not always very easy, especially when the sources we harvest from change. The topics we have defined at first, one really based on the work done by SPC, so we had to redefine that. And of course, we have to follow gathering usage statistics is good, but we have also to analyze it. We are continuously improving the Pacific Data Hub, adding new features such as DOI, citations, trying to improve positioning behind datasets or publications installed in CKAN, and we would always try to improve usability and new features. And we have to also work on the user documentation, especially for publishers. All that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Phil, who's going to show you how it works in real.
All right, thank you, Stan. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So you should be able to see the front of our Pacific Data Hub. So yeah, I'm Phil Bright. I'm in the Statistics for Development division of SPC. So I'm not directly in the Data Hub, but we work very, very closely together. And I'll just give a bit of an overview of a couple of data sets that are of interest and can show you how this all works. Now, I won't go into a lot of detail of the front, our entry point here, because you're all CKAN experts and have seen many of these sorts of platforms before, but obviously central to all of this is the search. And so if I go straight in and have a look for something like COVID data, which is very pertinent at the moment, we do have a contextual search that allows us to jump straight into some key data sets. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to do a complete search, and my internet's a little bit slow today, unfortunately. And so what I've got here is some vaccination data, and this is data that's being, so this first data set that's coming up here, that's actually being harvested from a data indicator platform that's independent to the data hub. This is structured data, it's open data. We use the open data scale as well to promote some of these data sets. Obviously, the focus in Data Hub is on structured and open data as compared to things like PDFs and Word documents and so forth. And so we try and give these prominence. If I open this up, we've got some basic descriptive data and resources that are being harvested. But obviously, the key for us here is also linking back to our source. And so this then straight away takes us into our indicator database so that users can view that data, manipulate it, download it, and so forth. What, if I jump back, what we also have, and so that's a harvested data set, but we also have data sets that we're injecting in through some custom scripts. And so what we wanted to do was to provide additional entry points into more customized views on some of the data that we have coming from these external harvesters. So for example, here I have vaccination data for Samoa, which is straight away giving us a view on a country that makes the data more discoverable for those that are specifically searching for Samoa data. And we can go straight to a custom view. I won't load that because it's the same sort of data. Something else that I wanted to show you, now this is going to be a relatively brief demo, and if there are questions, we can always jump back into it if we've got time. But something else that we have is a product called Pacific Map, which is very closely coupled with the Pacific Data Hub. And we can view spatial data that's in the catalog, but we also have a direct link to this indicator database. And so we can visualize some of this data, and I'm going to have a look at that same vaccination data set, COVID vaccination data set, spatially, prior to obviously determining that we want to go further with the data and so forth. And so, you know, here we can look at total number of doses of vaccines that have been administered in the region. We can look at these over time. We can go and have a closer look at a particular country. And I've got everyone's face up here that's in the way. And so I can actually then have a closer look at a specific data related to that country. Now, it's a very, very quick overview, as I said, of the Pacific Data Hub. We've got many other things that, if necessary, we can come back to, and I can demo later on. But I guess here is where I'd like to say, you know, please go and check it out in your own time, and we'd love any feedback that people may have. And so we have an API that's linked up to, obviously, to CKAN, but also to many of the platforms that we're harvesting from that can be used with a range of different tools to go and pull the data out. We also have a whole documentation site that allows users to go and have a look at how all this works and things like the API in more depth. And so I'll stop there, and I'll stop sharing my screen as well. And that's it from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now it's time to open the floor for questions and thoughts. So feel free to share in the chat, or you can raise a hand. I think, Stephen, you're a host, so you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
I've got power. Also, this might sound like a loaded question, but I generally haven't asked CEO or the folks at SPC this question recently. So I know that SPC got involved as one of the regional hubs for the Global Data Barometer, taking a leadership role in the Pacific, encompassing both New Zealand and Australia as well within that region. Just wondering if you've got any updates on how that's going and what it's looking like. Whether you're involved, I'm not sure. So it really might be a loaded and targeted question.
Yeah, I can respond to that, Stephen. Yes, we did put our hands up to be the regional hub for the Pacific for the Global Data Barometer Initiative. It's proven to be really challenging to get researchers in countries to carry out the research and the survey. We actually struggled with it. So what we ended up doing is running it in New Caledonia because we were on the ground there. We had contacts that we could work with. We had a researcher that was ready to go. The other reason we think it was good for us to start in New Caledonia was because the levels of maturity in data management, data governance, the uses of data, open data, are a lot higher than comparable to the other Pacific Island countries and territories. So I think for us, it made sense to start here where we're based. Both Phil, Stan, and myself are based in New Caledonia. And we have the contacts with government agencies, which allowed us to get this done relatively easily on the ground without having to work remotely with and coordinate researchers. I think there are some real lessons we can take from this experience and apply in other countries if there are subsequent follow-up editions of the Global Data Barometer research, and we're certainly keen to expand on this experience with New Caledonia and do that with other Pacific countries and territories. The analysis of the research is still underway, so they haven't released that yet. But I do know it will be released shortly.
Great. Do I have more questions?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Really great work. It looks good, and I think you've done a great job of pulling it all together. But like, I was going through and I was sort of like reverse engineering a little bit of the tech stack, and we've got CKAN, Drupal, HighCharts, a whole heap of different bits and pieces in there, and it looks wonderful. But I'm just wondering the choices around that and everything. What were the different choices that were made around doing that? I've sort of seen, other things where you've got CKAN type functionality that's already in Drupal with like DKAN or EKAN and stuff like that, and why you had to use Drupal as well as CKAN itself as opposed to React or something. So yeah, just wondering, how you went around that stuff.
Yeah, I might respond to that first, and maybe Stan, you can chime in if you want to add to it. A lot of the decisions were based on that initial choice we made on going with CKAN. Coupled with that was this capability we already had in Drupal within our organization. So we were already a Drupal shop, and we made that decision to go with CKAN purely because it had market share, it had the active community behind it. We did consider, DKAN. That tight integration with the Drupal was already there, because it was already baked in, but we didn't feel it had the following and active community behind it to be able to do some of the things we wanted to do. Some of the extensions we knew we wanted to use straight away were already available with CKAN, and they weren't available with DKAN. So, I guess one of the design principles we've tried to maintain is this loose coupling of components. Not getting too locked into any particular technology, and being careful about those decisions, so they're not locking ourselves into things that we can't easily pull apart if we need to further on down the line.
Cool.
I was just going to say, I can probably help with part of that answer as well, Sio, because I remember our perspective from SPC first coming to us with their requirement, And as Sioeli said at the start of his presentation, the project began as a proof of concept, and there wasn't entire confidence around how much budget was going to be allocated. And so there was a consideration in how we engage with all the stakeholders. And that became a question of content development and web experience development. So Drupal kind of came in to cater to some of those use cases without confusing the fact that it also needed to be a rock solid data portal. So the idea was you put your investment in web experience in Drupal and not confuse or overcomplicate the CKAN experience. But in the end, that's worked really well because the dashboards are built on Drupal, and there would be opportunity to introduce other technologies as well. But right now, it seems to work really well.
That's really cool. And so did you end up using like the Drupal API to be able to move some of the data around for the visualizations, or were you running like Python scripts from that CKAN side to be able to do those visualizations and stuff? Because the SDG one's very cool, the SDG circle. Yeah, good job on that, Stephen, I'm assuming.
Not me personally, but yeah.
Yeah, so that was really cool. I'm just wondering where all the data movement and stuff and the APIs and any custom type of things, was that more on the Drupal API side or the Python scripting side from CKAN?
Yes.
Yeah, so the SDG dashboard is a custom built dashboard using D3, the D3 library heavily. Stephen to talk about that because it was done by his team.
So definitely the data is directly called in from CKAN, but some of the other integration would be around single sign-on between the two applications. So the tokens would be set in Drupal and then shared into CKAN for continuing registered or authenticated users. And we also read some things into Drupal to create taxonomies or content types and populate those from CKAN. So the topics or categories, for example. So they can then be used as part of telling stories with data. There's inclusions that you can bring into content articles in Drupal that are being pulled from CKAN. So yeah, it's sort of harvesting direct from CKAN for some of that content being populated.
So some of the charts, the high charts on the SDG dashboard, they are driven by our .stat platform. It's a OECD product. So that's using the .stat API to pull in the data for the high charts.
But from the harvested data sets in CKAN?
No, so .stat is the source of the data. We do harvest that into the catalog, so it's discoverable and searchable from the CKAN catalog. But those visualizations, the high charts, is calling it directly from the .stat API. Stan, you were going to add something there because you did that work actually, so I'll let you talk to that.
But that's the front page of the SDG dashboard, which has been done by Link Digital. And then the high charts that you see in every gold page, those, as Sio said, use data directly from .stat through SDMX protocol, stored in Drupal, and then re-injected in JavaScript to generate those charts. So this one is not a great example of CKAN.
Great. Do we have any other questions? If not, I have one. Okay, let me see. Oleg, you have one? You can go ahead.
Sure. Hey, Steve and everyone else on the call. Thanks a lot for super demo. I just noticed you've got your, I already know you're quite into mapping and geospatial data. And I just noticed that you have 3 different map viewers embedded into CKAN. And I'd love to know if there's a story behind that, if you really think there are 3 different ways of visualizing geographic information, and where would I find more source code or background on the viewers in particular?
So you're talking about the resource views in CKAN?
Yeah, specifically on the you have 12 data sets in GeoJSON format. I'm quite interested in.
That's a great question. It's one it's a great question. It's one we're wrestling with right now, and we're looking to disable some of those data sets, or look at the rules around which resource views would be generated for which formats. And that's something we haven't resolved yet, but I think we're getting closer to a decision on Stan, if I'm correct.
We do know next update. Yep.
Yeah, we do know it has been the source of some confusion for our users. We know that GeoJSON files, for example, displayed better with the GeoJSON viewer as opposed to the map viewer, especially if there is feature info that you want to show in that resource view. Whereas the map viewer, if you've got multiple layers, that's better for that type of geospatial data set than the GeoJSON viewer. And our Pacific map resource view is kind of, I guess, a combination of both, but much more resource intensive to load. It's not the quickest preview, our Pacific map preview.
So working not just with the Pacific Data Hub, but other clients as well. The good thing about CKAN is because it has different resource views and different ways you integrate with previewing tools. There's no problem with having more than one. And sometimes it comes down to the data set itself. So some data sets are best used with something like OpenStreetMap because it lends itself to that kind of tile beneath the renderings. Whereas some of the ones like we just saw with the COVID, to get that sort of time series view through the Cesium viewer is kind of easier, and it's a nicer experience as well with the whole 3D rendering. So I think it's down to kind of what you want to do with the stakeholders you want to present it to, and what looks good and what seems to fit well. But you could roll that over time. You can deprecate them and not have the technical debt of having to like migrate or anything. You can kind of keep the old viewers there as well, and then focus on different viewers for newer data sets in different formats, perhaps.
Thanks a lot to all of you for some great answers, and really would love to continue this conversation after the call.
Awesome. We have another question in the chat from Mark Falvo. Maybe a larger discussion is needed, but can you give us any insight on the timeline, journey, and or milestones you went through to get from concept to go live?
Sure, I can respond to that. 2 years, I believe, was the timeline. So from inception and developing our proof of concept with Link Digital through to launch date, December last year. That was 2 years of iterating through different releases and wrestling with different problems and with harvesters and trying to get a critical mass of relevant data into our catalog. So 2 years in total. But that initial step of developing a prototype that we could use to demonstrate value quickly was really important. That got us the buy-in we needed to continue with this journey, and I can't stress enough how important that partnership with Link Digital for us was to make that happen, because we certainly didn't have the capacity or capability internally to do that ourselves quickly.
Did we answer your question? Yeah, I think we did. So my question was kind of connected with this one, but as you said, like the Pacific Data Hub is a result of 2 years of working round the clock. And what you did is just amazing. Like you've created a massive repository, largest connection of data about the Pacific. And I'm really interested to understand what were the main challenges when trying to establish a portal as a sustainable data infrastructure?
Yeah, I think the largest challenges for us technically were around data management, consistency in the way data is managed in the different business units. Beyond the technology challenges, I think an even bigger challenge for us was engagement with our stakeholders and establishing trust. I think everyone that's working in data initiatives will understand that trust is such a big factor. Because while you may be able to get something started quickly and get something off the ground, to sustain that and have continued support from your stakeholders, whether they're on the supply side or the demand side, or your investors or donors in our case, having that trust, establishing that trust and maintaining that and giving them confidence in what you're doing has been a real challenge for us. And I'm really happy to say that we've done well in that part. I mean, it was tough at the start, but I think you start little by little and you get the snowball effect, and other people see others jumping on the bandwagon, and that encourages them to have a look. And if they're missing out, we can get on next. Us or Stan, if you want to share from your side any of the challenges.
Well, as you said, I think related to trust at the beginning, I think we started with the data we had inside the SPC organization, and well, it was a change to gain trust, but the funny thing is the last few months, actually, I think we're now getting more and more contacts from regional organizations who wants to share their data in the PDH, so that's a good one. Technically, challenges, well, sure, quite a few. The good thing about starting working in a agile way, by iterations. We started. I was about to say fairly small, but no, actually we started quite big and just refined it as we go, as looking at the feedback we received, reading the feedback we got from users and from users and any stakeholders. It's a bit difficult to pinpoint what exact challenges we had to face, many of them, I guess.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat from Joy. How does the data upload work? Is it distributed and then approved centrally, or does the data upload happen centrally?
I can respond to that one as well. A bit of both. The majority of data sets in our catalog have been harvested, so I guess that's a central control there, where we have oversight of which harvesters which sources of data we want to harvest from, and we manage those harvesters within our team. We also have teams across the organization who publish their own data sets in the catalog. They, I guess, provide that centralized approval within their own domain or within their own business units. We also have external organizations publishing manually, uploading into the catalog themselves. We don't currently do any approval process on their their publishing. It's kind of based on trust at the moment, but I think that this is part of the data management journey that we're going on. We need to look at these processes and look how we can refine. Quality, of course, is very important to us. So it's an area I think we need to tighten up on. Unfortunately, we don't have many organizations publishing manually. Most of the data sets uploaded are ingested through harvesters. So there is some control there, and what metadata gets pulled in and so on. And we can run reports on what data sets are not compliant and so on. Does that answer the question?
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Yes, it does. So thank you. I see Joe has a question. Maybe Joe, you can just go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. The question is, do you have any plans for the member countries to operate your own portal? So, like you have a more distributed way of doing things and collaborating with them beyond just what you answered, just harvesting and then manually uploading it to the Pacific data. Thank you.
Sure. So the model we have implemented is based on a centralized hub. So that is the Pacific Data Hub. And within that hub, we can allow our members or countries to publish their own data and manage their own collections within the catalog. The reason we chose this approach as opposed to doing a distributed, deploying portals in countries, it was just easier for us to do this and manage it centrally. That there are challenges with capacity and capability in many of the countries, that they need a lot of help to be able to sustain deployment of portals in country. In saying that, though, one of our partners, partner development agencies in the Pacific, they have taken that other approach where they've built portals, deployed portals for the countries, but they still provide oversight and management of that infrastructure on behalf of the countries. So I think there are benefits to both approaches. I think we're able to move a lot faster with what we want to. We've obviously got more control of it because it's all in house. But the ability to move quickly has its benefits because we can demonstrate value quickly, as opposed to getting deploying things in country and being held back by quite often the lowest common denominator. Yeah, and that may be constraints on connectivity from within the country. But by positioning your infrastructure in a well-connected data center, you don't have those problems, connectivity or loss of power. But some countries, of course, want to maintain their own infrastructure because of data sovereignty concerns, and that's certainly something we would fully support for our members. So we are, in fact, looking at that's kind of a next thing on the horizon for us, is what those distributed deployments could look like if some of our member countries want to host and manage their own infrastructure in country. We have examples of that deployment model with other applications, other databases that our teams have deployed in the past. Running containerized deployments, for example, on low power consuming devices.
Great, thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise a hand or drop in the chat.
I just want to go back to Joy's first question about the data uploading, data publishing. I don't think it's an either or approach. It's both. You can have both, and there's value in having both the centrally managed and controlled QA process, but also there's value in allowing your users to take some of their control for themselves. So it allows you to get more get that ownership going with your stakeholders as well.
I've got a question on that then, Sioeli. So, you know, the Terrier.js, I'm not sure with the implementation what you've got on yours at the moment, whether you allow users just to drag and drop and overlay their own data sets on top of your data sets. But that's kind of a pretty unique feature that I think is pretty cool, that you're enabling people to drop in their own data sets.
We do. That was one of the draws for us for using Terrier. In fact, that's how we position this Terrier tool, which we call Pacific Map. It is a spatial data explorer for the everyday person, for the non-GIS specialist. Anyone can bring their own data and drag and drop it, overlay it on top of the map with existing data sets that are in the catalog as well. It's amazing when you do demonstrations on that with different groups of stakeholders, and show them you can bring your own CSV file as long as it's geocoded with the something that Terrier.js recognizes. You visualize your data very easily. Get a hand up there, Max. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, sorry if I'm speaking too much. Don't want to take over the conversation. But I was wondering, with the different data sets and so forth that are coming in, they're obviously coming from a lot of different sources, different countries, different systems and so forth. And I'm wondering if there's anything around like transforms and normalization and standardization, so that there's comparability and mapping for applicability that's sort of built into the system or within some of the CKAN scripts or something underneath there, or if they're all having to actually be manually processed to get them to have that comparability between them.
Yeah, so that normalization process or any kind of harmonization or standardization doesn't necessarily happen in CKAN. But it does happen in the other data platforms which CKAN is harvesting from. Phil, I might call you in to respond to this one around .stat and how you're pulling in data from different sources like the World Bank, OECD, the UN agencies, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Sioeli. So on the statistical indicator side, and this indicator database that we're primarily using for things like official statistics, we have built that using a system that's over the top of SDMX, which is a statistical data and metadata exchange standard, whereby you basically have a data dictionary that defines for a data set the structures that are being used, which then automatically means that any data that's being pulled into that structure is harmonized to some degree. And so when we're harvesting, we're also doing a bit of pre-processing to match data that's coming in with data that we have inside the system, that is then being harvested by CKAN, such as that COVID example that I showed before. So that COVID data, so the vaccination data, we also have cases and death data. That's all coming from our 22 member countries, from their ministries of health, most of the time from a website or from an Excel spreadsheet or something, and is then being pulled into a data entry template that we have that's feeding our indicator database, that's then being harvested, I think 6 hours later or something, by CKAN. I don't know if that answered kind of what you're asking, Max.
Yeah, so it's actually like you're saying, this is like the date field and this is and so I want it to map to there, and this is like a geo field and I want it to map there, and then it'll put it into the right format to be able to be comparable to and usable against the other bits that are in there.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. Is that a little bit like the Humanitarian Data Exchange, the HDX and stuff like that, where they've got like those meta libraries?
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on sdmx.org. You can have a look at if you're sort of interested in the standard. But that's very much the idea, is that you have essentially a dictionary for your data that then defines how things are being mapped.
Thank you.
All right. I'll just read a nice comment from Oleg that the data upload works beautifully. So well done. Yeah, if we don't have any other questions, I'll just give you a couple more seconds to brainstorm, and then I suggest we close because I'm aware of time. We have 5 more minutes left.
I think we should all say a big thanks to Sio, Phil, and Stan. Sorry.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think everybody would love to express their appreciation for your inspiring presentation. So yeah, thank you big time. And also thanks to our attendees for their attention throughout the presentation. I hope you enjoyed and you got some interesting insights. I just dropped some links in the chat at the beginning, and I want to quickly go through all of them. And I want to make an announcement for the next meetup in December. We decided to cancel it due to holidays and Christmas, so we are not going to have it. But we'll see you in January. So if you want to present on CKAN Monthly Live, there is a form you can fill out. Just fill it out and we'll contact you. We also encourage you to suggest topics for future meetups. So you give us what you're interested in and we organize it. There is a forum also and a link, so you can check it out. You can check out our website, CKAN.org. You can also connect with the community on Gitter, or you can add some discussions on GitHub or ask questions on Stack Overflow. You can follow us on social media. We have Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course you can share your experience with everybody and us.
Contribute code on GitHub.
Yeah.
As well.
Phil Bright says we have a chat module on Data Hub and contact details. Yeah, I'm not sure if I will be able to go through all the comments. Yeah, you have thanks from everybody. So thank you again. See you in January.
Thank you, Joanna, for organizing.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone, you take care.
Take care.